Hi, this is Leighton Jim, the Director of Development for the American Documentary and Animation Film Festival, also known as AmDocs. I'm here with Brent Huffman, and this is, quite frankly, my favorite program of AmDocs, is when we bring in the Medill students. I've been blown away. Medill is one of the great journalism schools in this country, maybe the greatest, and Brent is the one who nurtures them. And for several years, he's brought some of his top students with their documentaries, and this year promises to be another great slate. I believe there's six of them, right, Brent?
Yes, there's six documentaries, and I believe this is our ninth AmDocs, um, which is amazing. We love AmDocs. It's always incredible. They're so supportive. Yeah, it's such a wonderful experience for the students.
And one of our great success stories, Jenny, she came from Medill. And, after you introduced me to her last year, I've been spreading her story around because we're very proud of what she accomplished. And thanks to Medill, and we had a small part in her success. Who are our next superstars? Who are the six that we have coming from Medill this year?
So I will go through the list in a second, but the different from other years maybe is that there's a theme for the films this year. So they all are centered around stories about carceral injustice or prison stories and life inside prison, individuals that have been wrongfully convicted, and we had a chance to tell their story. So I actually taught twice now documentary classes where I go into a prison in Illinois and take a group of Northwestern undergrad students, and they partner with incarcerated students. So Northwestern now has the Northwestern Prison Education Program has a program where incarcerated people can, it's a very competitive program, but can apply to essentially get a 4-year Northwestern degree while inside a prison. And my students partner with them to create a short documentary in the quarter. So the six films are from that program.
That sounds amazing. I can't wait to hear about these.
So the six films, I'll go through I'll go through them quickly. So
Okay.
Jeffery Home, by Jankhna Sura and Esther Lim is about Jeffery Campbell, who has served 24 years of a 47-year sentence for a crime he didn't commit. Driven by his desire to reunite with his family, he applies for two legal processes that could bring him closer to freedom. Hey Hugo by Annie Xia and Ysa Quiballo is a film about a son who loves his mom and the family who wants him home. Another wrongful conviction story. Dear Hillary by Douglas Lee and Louis Castaneda. As teenagers, Mark Dixon and Leon Fields were sentenced to extensive sentencing during the super predator hysteria. Years later, they are preparing to fight the myth that put them behind bars. Until You Come Home by Sophia Jackson and Zella Milford is a documentary about Michael Ortega's wrongful incarceration and the impact that this unjust physical absence has on his family. And then there is Defying the Odds by Gia Cho, Claire Kim, and Justine Fisher, who is about Bernard McKinley, who actually did his sentence, was released from Stateville Prison, and graduated from this Northwestern program, and is actually the first Northwestern incarcerated person to come out of this Northwestern prison program that got accepted into the Northwestern Law School, which is a extraordinarily difficult process. And then there is one more film that I don't have up, called Oliver, and I'll get you the information about that. I don't have that in front of me, but if we can put it in the
Sure, we'll put it in the descriptions. And I'll be the first one I try to reach out to for an interview then.
okay, perfect.
What was the genesis of this idea for this year? I mean, it sounds like a great project. What led to this?
Yeah, so where to start? I'm, for better or for worse, I'm attracted to difficult projects. I'm getting ready to head out to Yemen in a week on a documentary that I'm directing. So I'm attracted to difficult stories and human rights stories, especially this idea of if there's a story that we want to tell and there's sort of these roadblocks, to overcome, the roadblocks and get access to the story is something that's really, really important to me. So I actually taught a class in the Northwestern Prison Education Program to just the incarcerated students, a sort of documentary theory kind of class. And I really kind of fell in love with the program, and the students were some of the best students I ever had. Some of the most focused students because they're trapped in prison, really. So they give you 200% of their attention, which is great. And then I proposed this idea of what if we would do some kind of documentary storytelling inside the institution where we would find a way to bring cameras and all the sort of video equipment inside the prison. And as you can imagine, that's not an easy thing to do. So the logistics for that were sort of started. We, of course, we're not given free reign to do whatever we want. Of course, there were a lot of restrictions and a lot of this could be a conversation for another time. Maybe a lot of hurdles, constant hurdles, honestly. But yeah, I did it once where I was able to bring equipment into Stateville, a correctional 100-year-old prison. Stateville closed because it was literally collapsing, honestly, and they actually had a incarcerated student die because of the heat. Like it was so, it was like I don't know, 120 degrees inside their cell. They actually closed Stateville prison, and now I'm teaching at another Sheridan correctional in Sheridan, Illinois. Yeah, I should say I made my first documentary was a prison documentary when I was an undergrad
Hmm.
at Warren Correctional in Ohio, and way back then in the 90s when I made this when I made this film, I actually had sort of total access for about a week where I could
Hmm.
film sort of anything that I wanted until that access was eventually taken away. So that's not the kind of access we're given, and I think partly maybe because of people like me that had free access, correctional institutions have sort of taken that away.
Hmm.
But we have access with the cameras to interview, film inside the sort of educational parts of the institutions, and then we do a lot outside of the prison walls, where my students interview family members and um, lawyers for the incarcerated students.
Hmm. Um, let's talk about impact. I know it's still early, and these kids, what's been the impact of the program? First of all, teaching the students within the correctional institutions, and maybe any kind of impact with the Northwestern students and their projects. Have we seen any kind of impact with those?
Yeah, 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 totally. So I think the impact is enormous on both groups of students. So many of the students on both sides say it's the most incredible classroom experience that any of them have ever had. And one of the things that really makes it, I think, incredible is the students, the incarcerated students are nothing like the negative stereotypes about prisons and prisoners of scary criminals or something. I don't know what the
Hmm.
negative stereotype your audience might have in their mind, but it's usually
Oz,
something. Yeah, right.
Oz,
Or Shawshank Redemption or something
yeah.
something terrible.
Hmm.
And while the carceral system is pretty terrible, these students are um, so warm and so giving and so kind of wonderful. Many of them are wrongful conviction stories. So the crime that they've been sentenced to, they attest that they didn't commit it, and a lot of the films look in the evidence that we believe should exonerate them really. So both students sort of have this kind of close relationship over the course of the quarter, collaborating. Um, and yeah, it's the kind of experience that both groups would never have outside of the class. And once, sadly, once the class ends, that relationship is ends and is sort of broken. And it's part of the class that I haven't totally figured out yet. Um, because it isn't like an ordinary relationship. The Northwestern students, Evanston students,
Mhm.
in probably outside of something extraordinary, will never see the incarcerated students again.
Mm.
So it is this kind of incredible privilege, this incredible experience, and I think one that changes the both groups of students. I think the Medill Northwestern students, most of them honestly want to have a part in helping incarcerated people in some way, or doing more with the Northwestern Prison Education Program. And I think the incarcerated students kind of fall in love with the documentary filmmaking process, um, and really want more. In terms of impact, part of what we're doing with the films is showing them to groups of lawyers to in the hopes that they will take on some of these cases. So there are a lot of we're lucky in Chicago. There are a lot of law offices that do a lot of kind of amazing, pro bono work for incarcerated people. And part of the impact, obviously, is like what we're doing at AmDocs, showing the film, exposing the stories, but also, literally trying to help these incarcerated people, connect to lawyers, connect to help to get them out.
Um, when you're talking about this, the first thing I think about is the system and prosecuting attorneys that, that seems like a big obstacle to get this project going because, like you said, they were wrongfully accused. And I don't know if, the system, that side of the system would want that story to be told or stuff like that. Was that an obstacle? And if it was an obstacle, how did you overcome that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So to be clear, like the class, I mean, it's a 12-week class, so it isn't like an exoneration program. Like we don't have lawyers on staff. Like we're not doing that work. And I think if we were, we maybe would have had more pushback. And Medill actually had a program like that in the past that came into some legal trouble. So partly because of that, we're not that. We're sort of a storytelling vehicle, but certainly, with the Illinois Department of Corrections, we run into issues um, along the lines of what you're talking about. Of I think the system sees them as sees the incarcerated students as sort of bad people, as guilty people, and you know, I think they don't like the whole sort of education program in general, and I think they're not crazy about what we're doing either. So that's always knock on wood, that's always an issue. That's always an issue for us, is that if they can make something difficult, they will. But it's sort of a strange hierarchy. Like I think the governor's office, the higher ups want the education program to happen. It's sort of the the Department of Corrections and sort of that level, like you say, the prosecuting attorneys that would like to see this kind of thing go away. But there
Yeah,
is support actually.
right. And then What about timing? Because I mean, now I don't live in Chicago. I've been reading about Trump's immigration and stuff like that, and a couple things that have been happening over the last few weeks. The timing of this is coincidence, or is there something tied to that with this project?
Yeah, so no, it's coincidence. Uh, but certainly, I mean, I think that it maybe couldn't be more important to share these stories now, because I think like immigration, I think anyone in the carceral uh, system, I think, will be negatively impacted by what's happening now in the government and government programs being closed and being scaled back, and it might be that activist groups and groups that do pro bono work for incarcerated people might have a much harder time to help them. So I think you know it's maybe more important than we anticipated, honestly, to tell these stories and get the stories out there.
Now let's talk about another production that you're involved with. Your daughter, she submitted a film that got accepted. Can you talk about your daughter's project and what's her name?
Her name is Edith Huffman, and she's actually named after a character in a documentary.
Oh,
Ironically, in Grey Gardens, there's a character named Edith.
oh,
Um, yeah,
that's pretty awesome.
yeah. So she's got the documentary bug, so to speak, pun intended, because the documentary is about cicadas. So it's called Magis cicada, which is a word for. So back in spring, especially in Illinois where we live, this kind of incredible thing happened where there was like two groups of cicadas that emerged at the same time. So there were like millions of cicadas, like literally millions of cicadas, like cicadas everywhere, and a sound. The cicadas, because there was like a million, it made this sound almost like a power plant or something, like a this sort of loud, omnipresent hum. And we see them flying, see them in the filling up the trees. So she decided to make this film partly because I think a lot of people were afraid of them, like thought they were sort of scary or gross. And the documentary really shows they're sort of magical and special and wonderful, and have this really positive impact on the environment. So the documentary looks at those things, kind of reintroducing cicadas as this wonderful thing that do wonderful things for the environment.
That's
So she
that's
went out
amazing.
filming
Now, how
cicadas.
much did she ask you for a lot of help, or she did this completely independently, or how much involvement did you have with this?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So she did it independently, but I was sort of the advisor, I guess. To she had to learn Premiere, so that's something she didn't know to edit the film. So technical support, I guess, was what I did. But she did it completely on her own. She did interviews on her own. Like yeah, I'm really proud. She's following in the footsteps, and I think um, wants to do more. So also the film was first submitted to a Chicago film festival called One Earth, and it won an award there.
Oh,
It Yeah, so it won like an honorable mention. So that I think that really meant so much to my daughter. Where she sort of got to accept the award, go on stage, talk about the film, talk about cicadas. Um, it's been really nice.
can you talk about now? We're starting this year. Although we had some students last year, we had high school students submit documentaries last year. Now we have a little bit more of a formal program thanks to Ellen Goodman and Palm Springs Unified School District. They donated to help the program. Um, can you talk about people doing documentaries at a young age? Because I don't know, they're on social media, and a lot of what they do is storytelling. It's a short jump. Can you talk about the the opportunities for people, for young people to start making their own documentaries. I mean, obviously your daughter did an amazing job. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so I love that. I remember last year the the those group of documentaries. So I love the idea. I mean, I couldn't be sort of more for it. I think young people. I mean, where to start? Young people, have this, I don't know, this sort of mountain of problems and worries, right? And with, I think the new the new government and administration, I think there's so much that I think young people are worried about, and have to sort of face from, climate crisis issues, and Magic Cicada, that film is partly about climate change and climate as well. But from human rights issues to from human rights and immigration to climate change to international relationships to what's happening in Gaza and in Palestine. I mean, there's so much I think young people are looking at and thinking about and sort of have in this sort of world they have to face. And I think making a documentary is a great way for a young person to express themselves and to try to not necessarily convert the fears into something positive, but sort of address some of the things they're thinking about in a way that can actually help a cause or help a human being or help the environment. So I think it's wonderful, and in many ways it's a way to empower a young person that might feel helpless and overwhelmed. Um, and I think
Knowledge is
once
power.
Yeah, and I think once you get over this kind of steep hump of, here's how a camera works, here's how editing software works, which is tough. It's overwhelming at first, but I think once you get over that, and the camera and editing software kind of become like a pencil on a sheet of paper, you know, just tools to tell stories. I think there's so much that young people can do, and um, you know, I think so much talent and so much we can learn from the work that they do.
It can be a new weapon, a new revolution, right?
Totally, totally.
Let's talk about really quickly journalism. You have a lot of journalists, but they're doing documentaries. Can you talk about? I know we talked about it a little bit last year, but you can expand on it. It's just the place in documentaries and journalism. I mean, we see the downsizing in media and the need for information, clear, good information. Not hyperbole. Can you talk about the role of documentaries and how you see that evolving, or how it has evolved, and how you see it evolving in the future?
Yeah, so I'm still extremely excited about the future, specifically of journalism and documentary sort of coming together. Like we saw the documentary in Ukraine winning the Academy Award. That is a piece of frontline journalism. Um, and that's the kind of thing that wasn't really happening in the past, where kind of the two forms um, have sort of merged together, where it's journalistic in content. So like you say, it's not hyperbole, it's not stereotype, right? So we're sort of breaking stereotypes, challenging audiences, but that's also sort of merging with kind of emotional, narrative driven stories, right? So it's kind of like we're cherry picking from both worlds and making something that can have an emotional impact, right? So instead of it being like and this is no knock on like um, you know local news or long form news, which I think is great. But something documentary can do is have this emotional impact with an audience where they see themselves in the subject. They relate to the subject on an emotional, personal level, and then I think you know see the story, whatever it is, in a way that's, I think, that's closer to their own, where they feel empathy, and where I think they want to, do something to, get involved or to help the subjects in the story. And I think that's one thing we tap into with these carceral, stories is, you know, wanting to break the stereotypes of, carceral people are these sort of, evil monsters, and show them that it's someone that's just like you, or that's just like a family member or a son or a daughter, that has this incredible story that you should, care about and feel empathy for. So yeah, I think it's growing, and I think I couldn't be more excited. And like you mentioned, I think AmDocs has done so much for this world too. I think Jenny Shi, who did Finding Ying Yang, which went to Paramount Plus and MTV and did really well. I think comes from this school too of journalism and documentary married together. And she, about 4 months ago, got major funding from ITVS for her new documentary. So she's kind of continuing down that path and doing really well. So I'm
Oh wow,
excited. Yeah.
wow! What's their new project? Do you know?
So yes, it's about there are a couple high profile cases of Chinese academics. So Finding Ying was also a China U.S. story. This is in that same vein, but Chinese academics being persecuted as spies by
Mm,
the U.S. government, and
mm.
I think it's something that will probably only get worse with with the new administration. But yeah,
uh, Echoes something I my friend experienced. So it's it, an interesting topic. Brent, really enjoyed this conversation. Really enjoy your program and the students you bring to our festival every year. We're looking forward to having you again, and as well as your daughter. This is going to be a great festival this year. Just a reminder, the American Documentary Animation Film Festival, AmDocs, is March 27th through 31st at the Palm Springs Cultural Center. You can get tickets now, and make sure you guys pop in and watch the Medill program. It's always been fantastic. It'll continue to be fantastic. So I hope people show up. Brent, again, enjoyed our conversation as always. And again, looking forward to to meeting your students and getting to know them.
great, and thank you so much to Teddy and to you for all the support. And MDocs is just so wonderful. So thank you from me and from the students.
All right, well, go Wildcats, right?
Yes, yes, go
All right,
Wildcats.
thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay.